You're not afraid of being alone. You're afraid of going back to the place that should have been your shelter and finding a battlefield instead. Strange, isn't it? The place called home is where you first learn to stay quiet, where every step has to be calculated, every word rehearsed 3 times in your head, like you're walking through an emotional minefield. You tiptoe on eggshells, but no one sees the shards cutting into your chest. And the cruelest part? They still call you dramatic. As if growing up trying to keep the peace between walls that scream even in silence were easy. As if loving someone who hurts you is natural, expected, beautiful. But it's not. Love that comes with fear isn't home. It's a trench. A place where you dress yourself in care, but inside, you're always on guard. Because one wrong word can turn into an attack. Because one honest gesture can be twisted. Because even your silence might be used against you. So you learn the art of dodging. Smiling when you don't feel like it. Agreeing just to avoid more damage. Hiding wounds no one will bother to ask about. But let me say this. Wanting to protect yourself isn't weakness. Recognizing the air is too heavy to breathe isn't betrayal. You're not broken. You're just trying to breathe in a place where the air runs out. And only those who've lived it truly know how exhausting it is to love while standing on your tiptoes. In some families, the thing that hurts the most isn't what's shouted. It's what's never said. It's the praise that never came. The conversation that was always postponed. The affection that existed, but only between the lines. And you had to learn to decode it like reading a book with no cover, no title. It's the way they look at you when you try to open up, and you realize there's no space there for feelings that don't fit the tough script. As if feeling too much was a design flaw. As if your sensitivity was something to be hidden or hushed. So you stopped talking. Because speaking never felt safe. Because being honest about your pain made you vulnerable in a place where that was treated as weakness, not courage. You begin to learn the house's invisible codes. The long sighs at the end of a sentence. The doors shut quietly, but with force. The dry answers. The looks that say everything the mouths refuse to admit. In this space, silence isn't peace. It's control. It's the deafening absence of being heard. It's a polished form of punishment. And the most subtle and loneliest kind of pain is this: having to interpret emotions instead of simply feeling them. Being forced to guess what's expected of you. Hiding what you feel so you don't shatter the illusion of harmony. Little by little, you adapt. You trim your words, lower your tone, wear a version of yourself that feels easier to digest. You pretend not to be hurt. Pretend it's fine. Pretend the things they say don't sting. As if being your whole self was always too much. That performance becomes your routine, your method of survival. So well rehearsed, you start forgetting who you are beneath it. But at night, in the quiet of your room, when no one's watching, the tears return. And with them, the question you try to silence during the day. Why is it so hard to be myself? Here, the answer doesn't come easily, because this kind of pain has deep roots. It comes from a time when love was measured in obedience, and validation was conditional. But here's something no one ever told you. Being too sensitive in a place that doesn't know how to feel is like trying to dance in a room full of sharp furniture. You hurt yourself just trying to move gracefully. And the pain of not being able to speak your own language in the place they call home is a kind of loneliness no amount of company can cure. No one really talks about it. About that tightness in your chest before a family visit. About the exhaustion that hits even before you pack your bag. About the emotional prep that starts days in advance. Like you're about to take a test. You already know you'll fail. You rehearse lines in the mirror. You practice neutral smiles, the kind that don't invite too many questions. You pick clothes that won't spark comments Rehearse answers that won't lead to arguments. Train your gaze not to reveal how drained you already are. And despite all the effort, you know you'll leave feeling wrong. Like you've failed at yet another invisible mission, being normal around your own family. But what stings the most is what comes after. The guilt. That inner voice that chases you on the way home, whispering, "They're your family. Why do you feel like this?" You try to convince yourself you're overreacting, that all families have their ups and downs, that maybe it's your fault for expecting too much, for feeling too much, for simply being you. But this isn't just a disagreement. It's not just a rough patch. It's an old wound, dressed up in Sunday lunches and polite conversations that leave you feeling empty. And here's the hard truth. Not all care is love. Not every presence is safe. Sometimes what they call love is just control wrapped in sweetness. You learn to dodge, not out of malice, but out of survival. Because loving people who hurt you puts you in an impossible bind. Be loyal to them, or stay loyal to yourself. And that inner war wears you down in silence. But hear this. That's not ingratitude. It's the fatigue of someone who doesn't want to bleed just to keep relationships alive that only exist if you follow a script you never wrote. The guilt you carry. It's not yours. It's a symptom of a system that romanticized staying close no matter how much it costs you. That taught you the bond matters more than your peace. That being there physically, even in absence of real connection, is better than walking away to find yourself. But it's not. You're not wrong for needing distance. You're just trying to breathe. Trying to remember that real love doesn't suffocate, and that even family, if it's to be healthy, needs the kind of boundaries where your soul can still recognize itself. You've felt it before, haven't you? That tension building up before you even open your mouth. Your stomach tightens, like it knows something's about to go wrong, even if no one says a word. Your heart races, like you're walking into a battlefield instead of a family gathering. It's not drama. It's your entire nervous system on high alert. Your throat locks up, not because you don't know what to say, but because you've learned, over time, that saying how you feel can be turned into a weapon. Worse, it can be used against you later in those silent stares or in phrases that start with, "Funny, you should say that." Because living in this kind of environment feels like holding a ticking emotional bomb. You don't want to hurt anyone, but you also can't keep erasing yourself just to keep the peace. So, you hold it all in. You swallow criticism dressed up as concern. You swallow advice that feels more like performance reviews. You swallow the classic "back in my day" that makes your pain feel invalid. You swallow heavy silences, snide remarks over dinner, that tone of voice that no one admits to, but still cuts deep. And inside, everything starts to scream. But on the outside, you smile. You make jokes. You pretend it doesn't sting. Because exploding would make you the villain, even though you've spent your whole life trying to be the peacekeeper. The exhaustion doesn't come from one big blow up. It comes from the slow accumulation of emotional bruises. From not being seen, again and again. From the quiet realization that there's no space for vulnerability in the place that was supposed to be your safe haven. You go home carrying an ache that leaves no marks. You lock your bedroom door and cry in silence. Then you wake up, wash your face, and carry on, as if everything's fine. But it's not. This kind of living chips away at you. It makes you doubt your own feelings. Makes you wonder if you're overreacting. If you're just being too sensitive. If you should be grateful just for having a family. And that's where the danger lies. When chaos becomes routine. When pain becomes your new normal. They taught you that maturity means putting up with it. But real maturity? It's knowing when enough is enough. It's realizing that silence can be a form of self-harm. That avoiding conflict sometimes just means abandoning yourself more quietly. This survival mode becomes your identity. And you start to believe you have no choice but to keep going in circles. But you do have a choice, and slowly, gently, you begin to see. Dodging your family isn't about lying to them. It's about protecting the part of you that still feels alive. It's about building a place inside yourself where you no longer need to explain, defend, or shrink. Where you can exist, fully, without the fear of exploding. Because for once, you've found a space where you don't have to hide. What if it's not about cutting ties? What if it's about learning to set boundaries with softness? You've spent so long hiding, adapting, reshaping yourself that maybe you forgot to ask, who am I when I'm not in defense mode? There is a quiet way to rebuild what pain once tried to erase. It doesn't come with speeches. It's not about loud confrontations. It starts with small decisions, gentle pauses. Sometimes change begins with a firm, calm no, with a whispered, yes, that's just for you, with the realization that honoring your space isn't an act of war. It's an act of care. You don't have to prove anything. Not to them. Not even to yourself. You don't have to convince anyone that your pain is real. It is. And only you know the weight you've carried in silence for so long. Maybe one day they'll understand. Maybe they won't. But their understanding can't be the price you pay for your peace anymore. Here's the truth. You don't need to dodge anymore. You need to learn how to walk lightly. And that begins when you stop trying to fit in and start really listening to yourself with presence, with honesty, because there's a version of you that doesn't need to be on guard all the time. A version that slowly learns how to exist, fully, without fearing that you're too much or not enough. And when you start living from that place, even the past begins to hurt a little less. Not because it changed, but because now you finally chose yourself. If this touched something inside you, maybe it's time to listen to yourself with more kindness. Subscribe to continue this quiet conversation with your own mind.